Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot
is
this the dagger.
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. And I have to say, on behalf of Cameron and Josh and myself and Devin Heroux, that if you stayed through that entire 1 hour and 46 minute episode we did last week, hats off to you, because it was a great episode and it was really fun to do. But pulling back the curtain a little bit, we did it a little bit backwards. Our technical producer, Marco Follow, does a wonderful job stitching us together. So we did the last segment first, and then we did everything else the other way around. So that's why the timing was a bit weird last week. So we very much appreciate you hanging in with us. And we're all back this week, Cameron, myself, and Josh, because we're going to talk a little bit more about Devin and one of the topics he brought up. But to give you more of an insight as to what we're going to be talking about this week, coming up on today's show, as I mentioned, we're going to debrief the Devin Heroux interview from last week. Plus, we're going to discuss the idea of whether athletes do or don't get enough of a break once the Olympics and Paralympics is over. Plus, what in the good name of Brock Richardson is going on with the Toronto Blue Jays. We're going to discuss that as well in the later half of the program, because they have had some news. And you heard the sigh from one Cam Jenkins. I'm sure he's so excited to do that in the third segment of today's show. I'm joined by Cam Jenkins and Josh Watson. Here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
Para Network is actively seeking enthusiastic community members to join their organizational committee. If you have experience in hospitality, sponsorship, or marketing, they would love to hear from you. Your skills and insights could play a vital role in shaping their events and initiatives, helping them create meaningful experiences for everyone involved. If you're interested in learning more about that opportunity and how you can contribute, please reach out to Tammy at onpara.ca, and I look forward to connecting with you.
Newfoundland's para-ice hockey star Liam Hickey has been named one of 8 recipients of the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador for 2024. The Order of Newfoundland and Labrador is the province's highest honor and recognizes individuals who have demonstrated excellence and achievement in any field of endeavor, benefiting in an exemplary manner the province and its residents. Hickey is one of the rare athletes to compete at both a summer and winter Paralympic Games. He made his winter Paralympics debut in 2018, helping Canada to win the silver medal in para-ice hockey after first playing for Canada in wheelchair basketball at the Rio 2016 Games. Congratulations to Liam.
Baseball player and manager Pete Rose passed away recently at the age of 83 years of age. Some of his statistics include the following. He had a career .303 average. He had 4,256 hits. He had a 44 game hit streak. He was a 17-time All-Star participant, a 3-time batting title award winner, and 3-time World Series champion. When you think of Pete Rose, you think of the success that he had as a player, but you also can't help but think about the damage he may have caused in his career later on as a manager. And we're going to discuss that a little later on in the program, and I'm going to ask the panel a very, very specific question related to that, so stay tuned for that later on in the program. Those are your headlines for this week. If you want to get a hold of us on social media, here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this ball game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR.
Steal!
First pitch and a strike. Hey, gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play. Out! And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. And the Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.
As I mentioned off the top of the program, we had a wonderful time with Devin Heroux. He always gives us great insight, great time, all those things. And I asked Devin before we hit record, I said, Devin, how much time do you have? Because I want to be respectful of that. And he said, how about 30 to 40 minutes? And we ended up going about 45 minutes with Devin. And he made the remark, because no one wants to hear me that long. Well, us at the Neutral Zone always want to hear Devin talk that long. So I want to start with what your overall thoughts were on the interview. Cameron, start with you, and then we'll move straight over to Josh.
Yeah, Devin, he is the most positive guy that I've seen in the media. It's a breath of fresh air, the way he reports and the way that he tells stories is just absolutely phenomenal. And I can see why he's with CBC, because CBC really seems to be able to put those heart-wrenching stories out, the ones that really impact you, the ones that you feel close to the athlete and what they're going through. Somehow Devin brings that out in his interviews and when he's on the show with us. So Devin is an absolute treasure to Canadian sportscasting.
I think that's very well said, Cameron. I love doing interviews with Devin. He is as much a fountain of information as our other friend of the show,
Scott Russell.
Thank you. But yes, he's as much a fountain of information as Scott Russell is. He always brings us some sort of information, and I think the last 2 or 3 interviews we've done with him, I've heard him say, I haven't discussed this anywhere else. So he always seems to bring us some little tidbit of information that he hasn't shared with anyone else, which is quite a generous thing to do considering his stature. He is incredibly bubbly, incredibly vivacious, as you mentioned, Cameron, and he brings a smile to my face every time we get to talk to him. So I'm really glad we got to talk to him about his Olympic and Paralympic experience, and it was a really, really great 45-minute interview. The time flew by.
Yeah, it's to the point that we had to cut some questions off the table because it was so good, and he was giving us such good detail. And that's the beautiful thing about Devin and Scott in particular, is when you ask them a question, it's not just a here's my answer, moving on to the next one. It's a here's my answer in detail. And something that I never really got to publicly say to Devin this time, which when we have him on again, I will be, his interview with Jacob Wasserman, who's the individual who survived the Humboldt Broncos bus crash, who's now in canoe or kayak, one of the two, I can't entirely remember. But his interview, just the way that he did the interview, had me in tears. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it had me in tears. And it's because, as you guys say, he pulls out the real story, the deep story. He interviewed his parents first, and then he interviewed Jacob. And it's just, he just has a way about bringing the heart out of each story. And I think that's what I admire about Devin. And he always wants to be a part of our interview. It's not like he I'm gonna do this because I have to, because there's nothing stopping Devin from saying, look, I've done 4 or 5 interviews with you guys, that's enough. He literally, and I can't remember if this was on the recording or not, but he literally was like, my next time we can schedule would be sometime in November. And it's like, oh, okay, you're coming back, and that's great, and we really want to keep that relationship with Devin for what it is. My follow-up question to you guys is, why do you guys think that Devin is so passionate about parasports, and what do you think brought him to be that way, Cameron?
I just think that he is passionate about Canadian sports, period. And that's all encompassing. So whatever he's assigned to, be it, sports leading up to the Olympics, Olympics, Paralympics, curling is another huge passion. It feels like when he's doing the curling show with Colleen Jones. Whatever he's assigned, he just puts his whole heart and soul into whatever he's working on, and he becomes passionate about that sport, and it's great to see.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that my impression is that Devin loves to tell stories, and he wants to get the story out to people. He wants to build these Olympians and Paralympians up, probably because he knows that many of them are either in a sport that's too obscure to really be picked up on by mainstream television, or that in a lot of cases, Paralympians and Olympians are such humble people that they won't tell you their story. So he, I think, takes a lot of pride in bringing out that story and sharing that with people. And I agree with you, Brock. His talk with Jacob Wasserman was an incredible interview. It didn't have quite the same effect on me, but I was certainly moved by it for sure. And I'm looking forward to sitting down and watching or listening to his interview with Maggie McNeil, the Olympic swimmer who just retired, because I'm sure, once again, we're going to learn a lot of things about Maggie and just really see her for the amazing human that she is. So I'm excited about that.
One of the things, Josh, that you brought up to me offline was the fact that you really respected something that Devin did. And I didn't really think about it in the same way that you did, because I just know that this is the type of person that Devin is. And I'm not saying you don't believe this, but you said to me, I was really impressed that Devin deferred to you with bocce. He really stepped back and said, you are the expert to the situation. You are the person that would know. And we had a two-way conversation. It takes a very, very skilled professional to realize in a moment that in this particular topic, I need to take a back seat and defer to, and I have trouble calling myself an expert, but I guess it's because of my sport, and I've been there for so long. I will let Devin call me an expert, but he wanted to defer to the expert, and he wanted to say, what's your opinion? And I very, very much respect Devin more now, and I don't know if there could be much more respect that I would have for him, but I respect him more now because of that decision he made and having that two-way conversation. Josh, I just want more of your comment on this, and then Cameron, I did hear a in the background, so I'll let you comment about it as well.
Yeah, it was really quite interesting to me, because Devin does know quite a bit about a majority of the sports that he covers, and so figuring that he would have some knowledge of the bocce event, I think we naturally asked him the question. But I think in his answer, he explained that, he was mostly at the pool and at the track. And so he, unfortunately, much as he wanted to, didn't get to the bocce. And so he wanted your opinion of it. And I agree with you. I think that really does just speak to him as a professional and saying, like, I'm not going to BS an answer here. I'm going to refer back to Brock, who's been a 2-time Paralympian, which is something you should be proud of, and ask what he thinks and what he believes happened to Allison and Julian and the team that went to Paris. So it just speaks to his professionalism, I think.
Yeah, Josh hit it on the head. Professionalism. He wasn't able to get to a lot of the bocce, and he knows that you played bocce and you've gone to Paralympics. So why wouldn't he kind of swing it to you and put you on the hot seat and ask you the question? Because I remember watching one of Allison's games, and I couldn't understand why it was taking so long to the referees make a decision on something. So I'm texting Brock right away. Why am I going to Brock? Because he played. He's the expert. Or more so than if I texted, Josh or Claire or somebody else that doesn't necessarily know bocce. You're going to go to the person that knows quite a bit about it. And the expert in this case is Brock. So
right. And an expert doesn't necessarily have to be someone that knows everything about something.
No, absolutely.
It just has to be someone who knows more than you do. And so that, to your point about not feeling like an expert, Brock, you may not be the technical expert that knows every little rule and every little thing about bocce, but you've played the game, you know the strategy. And so for us who are watching it going like, why did he do that? And why didn't he just try to do this instead? You can sit there and you can say to us, well, no, this is kind of what he's thinking, and this is why he would have gone this way instead of do this. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know more than the person you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think too, like, for me, I've been able to and had the privilege of commentating 3 different bocce events over the course of the last 5 years. And I think now I'm watching it in a different way, from a different vantage point, because now I'm looking at it as like, okay, I'm not in the pressure of having to make a decision. So now I'm not necessarily looking at it with laser focus, but I'm looking at it as to, what does the audience need to know in this moment that's going to make sense? You're not going to need to commentate every bocce shot of a game, but you do need to give them the picture. And I think that's the beautiful thing that I've taken from being able to now be part of the broadcasting world, and the broadcasting course that I've taken, is that I'm learning my skills, and we were called experts on other platforms. And I think, to your point, it's not that you have to, both of your points, it's not that you have to know 100% of everything, because I'm sure if you asked Devin, do you know 100% of everything, he would laugh. He'd say, no, I don't. But I'm going to defer to him as the expert in this situation. And for me, I remember when I put together this podcast, for AMI and all of those things, and then we moved it to On Para. And I remember in the intro, somebody said to me, you really should put the fact that you're a 2-time Paralympian at the top of the show. And I was kind of like, I don't know about this, but it is something that I have done, and it is something that makes sense. And the reason that was given to me was because otherwise people just say, who is this Brock Richardson character that we're opening up the show to? It's something that, brings people to. And so I get it now. And when we carried it from one broadcaster to another, that is something that, I said to Mark, we need to keep this because I agree with what's being done here. And Mark said to me, I'm not taking it out, whether you, whether you told me I'm going to or not, because that's just the point. But I think sometimes broadcasters, to circle back to Devin, sometimes broadcasters need to be sort of that humble and say, no, I'm not the deferred expert here, so I'll give it to you. And I respect Devin more today than I did before the interview, and I respected him a lot anyway. But because of that, it just meant a lot, and it's something that I think I learned from Devin as well, that sometimes it's okay to defer and say, I'm not necessarily the expert on this, so let's defer to the person that is. And yeah, I think it was a great interview, and trust me, we'll have Devin on again down the line, because a lot of the time during the interview, some of us were laughing and trying to hold it back, because I would have laughed out loud a few times with his cadence and the way that he does things, and it's fun to be around Devin. But one of the serious points that Devin brought up during the interviews was the fact that athletes in general don't get an opportunity to stop and breathe and say, okay, take a moment and realize what they've accomplished at either the Olympics or the Paralympic Games. And he said, we don't give athletes that time to decompress. It's always what's on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. Why do you guys believe that the media and others around do this on to the next thing? Josh?
I don't even think it's necessarily just the media. I think it's just the way things are. Like, for example, I remember we talked about the story of Summer McIntosh and Ethan Katzberg making or being chosen, to be flag bearers for the closing ceremony. And we said, they both had to be brought back to Paris. Well, I keep wanting to say it's Penny Alexiak, and it wasn't. It was Summer McIntosh. I know this. Summer, of course, had her birthday back in Muskoka, and that's why, or one of the reasons why she was coming back. But Ethan had gone on and was continuing to train, because as a track and field athlete, you have the summer basically to compete. And so you have events like the Diamond League, for example, in athletics, in track and field. Those events don't stop. They make way for the Olympics, and then you move on. So the calendar doesn't necessarily stop. And so even though, yes, you've just been named the Olympic or Paralympic gold medalist, well, now you've got your regional championships and your provincial and your national championships for the next cycle starting. And so I think I remember hearing some athletes say that they might take 2 weeks off to enjoy themselves, and then they're right back at it. They're on the track, or they're in the pool, or they're on the court. And it's just like, oh my goodness. I know another friend of our show, Erin Young, she plays professional wheelchair basketball over in Europe. Now, she was in Germany. She's got a new team this year. She's playing in Spain, apparently. I just found out yesterday. But they were just at the Paralympics, and now she's gearing up for her professional season. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, what can you say? Every sport has its calendar of events that you have to. I'm sure you have to do so many events per year in order to qualify for a world championship, or at least that's the way it used to be. Maybe it's changed, but you have that calendar of events, and however that kind of rolls out, that's what you have to do. So once you're done the Paralympics, you could very well have a week off, maybe 2 weeks off, and then you're back at it, because you're training maybe for world championships that might be happening in a month or two. And you have to be able to be at your top peak performance for that. So it's, you'd like for them to be able to have, I don't know, a month or two in between maybe winning such a high profile event like the Paralympics, and then kind of getting back into it maybe after a month or two. But at the end of the day, you've just got to go with the calendar of events of your sport and go from there. And that's the cost of being a high performance athlete.
I was just looking at again, touching back on the Diamond League, I was looking at their schedule because we know that the track season is at the same time as the Olympics. And they've literally got events here July 7th, July 12th, July 20th, August 21st and 22nd, August 25th, August 30th, September 4th and 5th, September 13th and 14th was their last event. So you have to cram in your events when the season is on, because I mean, you're not going to have an athletics meet, a track and field meet in the snow, for example. So, but you've got indoor meets, so it never stops. You have to pick and choose with your coach and your organizing committee, I suppose, what events you're actually going to do, because I mean, not so much in the para world, but in the traditional sports world, something like Diamond League, you win money for placing highly. So that's how you get your training money, I would assume, is by winning those events. So as we both said earlier, what choice do you have?
Cameron, I want to tug on a little bit of a point that you made, because we all recognize that there's this obvious stop for the Olympics and the Paralympic Games, and should there be more of a window to like, okay, so we're gonna push everything back, but as Josh just articulated, where do you push it back to? Like, should we have more respect to those athletes that, maybe we take a little bit of extra time on it, or does the schedule just not allow, as Josh just articulated?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. They could push things back, but then what else does that affect in their season? So like once you become a high performance athlete, it's like any job. Like you have to understand what the job's all about and go with it, and whatever that job is, because all jobs are going to have positives and negatives to it, and you have to deal with both. And if you want to be a high performance athlete, if you want to have a chance at getting that gold, silver, or bronze medal, then you have to make sacrifices, and that's what they're doing. And I'll relate it back to hockey, because I've heard my dad talk about the NHL players and how they during the off season they might have gone to, I don't know if it's King Clancy or whatever, but they had some sort of a mine that they would work at during the off season, and then back to hockey. And they didn't train as hard as the NHL players do now. And the NHL players now, they train like year round. And if you want to be the best at your sport, you have to train year round in order to be able to be at that high level. And that's a sacrifice you have to make if you want to be the best.
I think that's also, in your example, Cam, the difference between what they made back then and what they make now. Because back then, you didn't make enough money as a hockey player to necessarily support your family for the year.
100%.
So you did have to say, okay, my season's over, and now I'm going to go back and work at the lumber camp or work in the mine or go back to selling shoes or whatever it is that they would do in the off season. But nowadays, with the millions and millions of dollars and what they're now terming the generational wealth, you have the ability to focus, and you have the ability to just do that as a career and focus on it. But I do think you can take it too far, and I think that's why we see players getting injured.
Yeah, I mean, I and I say this tongue in cheek for the audience member out there, but I don't see a world where you see Shohei Ohtani, finishing the season and then going back and shining shoes at the airport because he's making money. He needs to make money. That's just, it's a world now that we live in that you just go, I don't think that's happening. But as you guys well point out, because of that, you risk injury. But I mean, you could have risked injury to those people going, back to the mines. You could risk injury to people, whatever they're doing every day. You're subject to injury that may happen. Now, of course, you can't live your life in assuming that I'm not going to go to place A, B, or C because, I'm going to risk injury. Unless you can try to avoid that, like if it's raining and you're supposed to go on a like I live in a bubble.
Live in a bubble.
Well, they do try though.
Bubble boy.
They do try. Like every major league contract, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, basketball, there will be clauses in contracts to protect players from themselves, basically. I can remember hearing a story about former Montreal Canadiens goalie Carey Price going back to BC in the offseason and participating in rodeos. And I thought to myself, how did no one put a stop to this? But apparently they didn't.
What's going on with that guy?
Yeah, exactly. But you see it all the time where guys will be like, you can't go skydiving, you can't go bungee jumping, you can't go whitewater rafting because you might catastrophically injure yourself.
And wasn't there something
I
along
think
with
you're right, Cameron. There was something with
am
ATVs.
I thinking probably of some crime
too.
show that I watched?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think you kind of figure out, okay, what crazy thing is my athlete likely to do? Okay, we're putting it in your contract. You can't do this.
Yeah, because you got to protect them. But even like back in the days where they had to make more money in the off season, like the dedicated ones would still work out in the off season.
Oh, of course.
If you wanted to be the best. And that's what you had to do. But then you think about even as, early or late as the 80s, Gretzky, aren't there stories of him of like eating hot dogs or something in between periods or chocolate bars, or I forget what he would eat, but it was like...
I'm not sure about Gretzky, but I know there were stories about Phil Kessel eating hot dogs.
Yeah, that was the big thing with Kessel and... eating hot dogs. Steve Simmons, he did an article about that, but there was something about Gretzky too, and they would eat certain things during the period and to get carbs going or whatever, and it's just like, it's a whole different perspective now, and if you want to be the best, you've got to work out like almost all of the time, but your body needs rest too, so you need to listen to your body.
Again, I don't mean to end this portion of the conversation on doom and gloom here, but you take a look at the Gaudreau family here. Okay, they were going to a family member's wedding and they were on a biking wherever they were going, and that's where the tragedy happened. And so what are you going to do now? Put in players' contracts? And I know I'm being totally over the top on this, but you're not going to put in players' contracts. You can't go to a wedding of your sister, and you can't ride a bike wherever you were riding. Like, there is a line to which you just have to understand that tragedies, accidents do happen, but you guys are right in that you're going to protect your athlete as much as possible, but there does only become so much protection that you can do because of situations like the...
If something's going to happen, something's going to happen.
100% agree. Have you guys felt rushed in your careers in parasports in the context of the conversation we've been having? And if so, what was it and how did you handle it? Cameron, start with you.
No, I don't think I've ever felt rushed. But I was also just at the grassroots level, playing hockey or playing sledge hockey or throwing. So I never felt like I was rushed to do anything. I would just train and, of course your coach kicks you in the butt to try to get you to train harder, to lift more weight or, to concentrate and get in the game and, things like that. But no, for me, I've never felt that way.
I wouldn't say I've ever felt rushed, but certainly we do, depending on the sports we play, like Cameron and I are both former para ice hockey players and former throwers. And so you do have a situation where you practice your throws from, say, April 1st until August 31st, maybe. But then you might only have 2 weeks off, and then you start into hockey and you start training for hockey if you're the type of person that wants to go far in hockey. And so it's not that you're rushed, but it's a grind, because you just kind of roll from one to the other, back to the first, and that's just the year. You kind of judge what point in the year you're at by, oh yeah, I'm at the London tournament this week, so it must be January, or I'm at the Cruiser Cup, so it must be November, or I'm at national championships for para-athletics, so it must be like July, August. Paralympics are on, it must be early September. That just becomes your life. And I think that's the same regardless of whether you're a para-athlete or a traditional athlete, in that it's always one thing to the next. We just happen to both play different sports at different times of year, so it's not quite the same. For somebody who plays soccer, for example, you've got your club season, then you've got your international season, then you've got your transfer window, and so soccer runs all year round. And so I don't know how those guys do it, because I wouldn't know what I was playing for, quite frankly. I'm like, what jersey am I putting on? Where are we? What's happening? What cup is this?
Right. And that is really something that happens, is like, what am I doing? And you're right. It's such a calendar focused thing, in that, this is then, this is now, this is in the future, what have you. And I think for me, if I look at, my question that I posed to the group, did I feel rushed? No, but there were times that I would say, oh, I can't wait till I get to ABC break, whenever it was, because my PVR is full of trash television. Still is full of trash television, by the way. But that's just the life that you live. Looking back on it now, I think if I was to tell myself then what I now understand today, sitting here, in the early beginnings of October, I think I would tell myself, be careful what you wish for. Because now I look back and I think, did you fast forward your life because you just couldn't wait to get to the end? Because now we're at the end of our career. And are there times that I look and say, man, I miss those days? Yes. But I think you have to be careful as an athlete of, what are you hoping for? What are you hoping to gain? Because one day it is going to come to the end of the road, and you are going to have to stop what you're doing and pick up something else. And that picking up something else, whether it's within sports or outside of, is not as easy as one would make it seem. So.
And you raise a very good point there, in that, I miss those days. Well, no, you miss the good parts of those days. If you really sat back and were objectives, like, do I miss the 4 practices a week or 3 practices a week? Do I miss the games on Sundays? Do I miss the driving in the snow to go to Peterborough for a hockey game?
Hell no.
That, of course not. Like, unfortunately, that's kind of where I'm at with my hockey career. I love the sport. And if there was an opportunity at a time when I could go, where I could go out and just play shinny, I'd do it. I remember a summer where Cameron and I played with a group of guys. That was a lot of fun, until I accidentally almost gave someone his X number of concussion. But that's another matter. But yeah, just something like that would be fine. I just go down to the local rink, play beer league sledge if it existed. But to actually
got to start that up there, JW.
To join the club again, and to travel to Ottawa and Peterborough and some of these places, the games were a ton of fun. I can say that I've played in the same arena as the Peterborough Petes if I really want to. But it's the driving, it's the practice nights right after you're tired from work. That's the stuff that I don't want to do anymore. And so that, for me, is how I kind of decided, okay, well, at least for that sport, I'm done. But we talked last week We talked last week about a paracycling event coming up in Milton in a couple of months. I might go check that out.
Yeah, I saw that too.
It might be fun.
But I hear, as soon as you said going to Peterborough, it seemed like every time we went to Peterborough, like it was a night game or a late afternoon game. And so, of course, the sun goes down early, and it snowed every single time. And I remember like being in a whiteout situation, and I called my parents, and I'm like, there's some creepy Bates Motel like along the 35 or whatever that length of
35 115.
Yeah, so the 15, and so I go into this creepy Bates Motel, but like that was more worth it than trying to get home, but then I realized when I woke up the next day, if I had just kept going about another 10 kilometers, that's where the 401 was, and it was fine after that. But man, like some of those Peterborough trips and the whiteouts, I do not regret not going to those anymore. Oof.
I remember being on the road home from, I think it was Ottawa, and getting a call from Brock partway home, and I'm like, guess what? You guys are going to stay on the phone with me for a little while because I'm freaking out just a bit.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, no problem. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And so we talked as I drove, but I was already on the highway. It was just
calm the nerves.
That it was a snow squall and you couldn't see where you were going. And so I'm like, please let there be something big in front of me that I can just follow, because it's not going to go off the road.
Yeah, I don't miss those at all.
And if it does, it'll take me with it.
Yeah, I don't miss the trips to Montreal that we had to do in the wintertime, and like we were on a V-Rail trip, and V-Rail is one of those things when you're sitting in an electric wheelchair where you're just like living the life, and because you're in first class and you get the food, the drinks, the whole kit and caboodle, and you wouldn't tell the coaches how much you actually ate on the trip
no, of course not.
That you took. But there was one trip where the train ahead of us derailed, and so they couldn't get around the derailment of this train, and Via Rail tried to contact the GO train, who had tracks that would have allowed us to get around. They explained, we have a bunch of people with mobility challenges and so on and so forth. Can we use the track? Nope, you can't. And so we, from Toronto, because we didn't get very far, some of us left from other places, but from Toronto we had to board taxis, and which VRL paid for. It took us over 12 hours from VRL Toronto to Montreal because of this snowstorm. We got in Montreal the next day and we're like, who, what, where, when, why, what are we doing?
Why am I here?
That I will never forget. And like, the schedulers didn't, like, they cared. I don't want to pretend like they didn't care, but this is to your point. The show must go on, and you had a game in 30 minutes from when you arrived. Thank you, you got here. That's it. That's all there is.
You're here. Hooray.
We go.
Now get ready to play.
And that's just the way it rolls. And
yeah, I mean, the three of us could reminisce forever, I think, because I can remember a trip to Sudbury, but I won't bore everybody with that story.
I know exactly that one. I was thinking of that exact same one.
We need to have this discussion off air now about this trip to Sudbury, because I'm very interested.
Sudbury Saturday night.
Yeah. I'm gonna make. Oh, actually, let's tell our people that they should hear from our sponsors right now before we move on.
The Neutral Zone is sponsored by the Ontario Para Network. Their focus on the growth and development of wheelchair basketball, tennis, and rugby in Ontario.
I'm gonna make Cameron happy, and I'm gonna jump down on the script a little bit, because I think this other topic that is the Blue Jays, we can talk about next week. We can talk about any other time. But Pete Rose, I think if we push this further down the page, it's going to become older news. So let's do the Pete Rose story at this point. As I mentioned in the headlines, Pete Rose passed away at the age of 83. He had a lot of great statistics in which I read out in the headline, and I will give credit where credit is due. Cameron put those in our group chat, so thank you very much, Cameron, for that. But he also had a little bit of tarnished stuff go on because he bet on baseball on his own team as a manager and then received a lifetime ban. My thought process here and concern, to be perfectly honest with you, is that when somebody passes, it feels like we put the bad thing away of somebody and we say, well, let's look at all these records that I just articulated a little while ago and let's put him into the Hall of Fame. So he's no longer with us. Do you guys believe that he could get into the Hall of Fame because of this, or is it just nope, sorry, you received a lifetime ban, doesn't matter that you're now gone, sorry, the ban is what it is? So do you think eventually he gets in, or no, it stays where it is? Start with Josh and then go straight over to Ken.
I think he absolutely gets in. I quite honestly, I'm surprised it's taken this long for him to get in. And I understand betting in baseball, betting on your own team in baseball, bad. I totally understand that. But how many of the players in the Hall of Fame, if we really dug into their history, would come up looking a little bit not like angels? I think of Ty Cobb as a perfect example. He's reported to have been incredibly bigoted and incredibly racist. There are others who have done things that probably, if they considered character, would have precluded them from the Hall of Fame. I think it's very dangerous to consider morality when we're considering our people who are enshrined. There's nothing that says that you can't be a gambling addict but not be an incredible baseball player or manager. Should you have done what you did? Of course not. We all know that. Also, I remember him getting an exemption to be part of Major League Baseball's 100 Greatest Players that was at their 100th anniversary or something a few years back. So if they can make an exception to let him do that, put him in the Hall of Fame, but put the whole story. Yes, he was an incredible baseball player. He had a 44-game hit streak. He was a 17-time All-Star. But he also bet on baseball games involving his own team. Put it all out there so people know exactly what kind of a person he was. Don't hide the bad parts. Put it all out there. But he should not be excluded from the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Same thing with a more contemporary group like Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, and those guys. Put them in the Hall of Fame if their numbers dictate that they should be there, but put on there that they were accused of cheating so that history has the whole story.
Yeah, as far as Pete Rose, it was a lifetime ban, and his life is now over. So a lot of people, he'll probably get into the Hall of Fame, but I disagree. I don't think he should. He bet on baseball. It's clearly that he shouldn't have bet on baseball. Even worse, he bet on his own team. Imagine how your teammates must feel when you bet against your own team. And I don't know if he did bet against them or if he bet for them, always winning.
Well, and he did it while he was a manager, so he had control of who he put on the field.
So that's horrible to do. And to bet against your team, to me, that would be a cardinal sin. So I don't think he should ever get in there. Unfortunately, with the way the world is, I'm sure that eventually he will, because it was a lifetime ban and he's no longer with us. So I'm sure he'll get in at some point in time, but I disagree at the highest level that he should never get into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Do you know, Cameron, I never really thought of, and I just read it, but it didn't really click in my mind until you said it. You're right. He has received a lifetime ban. His life is now over. And I it seems so obvious, but it didn't really click to me until you said it, and I went, "Oh yeah, I guess lifetime is while you're alive, and he's no longer alive." And so I really think that that's a very poignant point that you just made there as well. I will ask you this question, and I'm not saying, and I'll start with Cameron on this, but I'm not saying that we can prove this or at all. But I was having a conversation with Kelly McDonald, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago with us, which we greatly appreciated. But he said to me, "Brock, what happens then if we could prove that Pete Rose always bet on his team to win? Are we in the same boat?" And I want to know your thought process on this, because obviously you always want your team to win. So would there have been anything wrong if we could prove that it was constantly win down the line, Cameron?
I think that looks better on Pete Rose if he was always betting on his team to win rather than losing. But the rules are the rules, and he bet on baseball and he bet on his own team. So I'm still of the mindset that he should never get into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I can totally respect that opinion. For me, it doesn't make a difference to me whether or not he bet on his team always to win or not. I would certainly say it looks better if he always bet on them to win, because then he can't say, well, I bet on them to lose, so I put all the bench warmers in the game so that we would lose the game. Having said that, I don't think we would ever, unless we went through every betting slip he ever put in with his bookie, I don't think we'll ever know how he bet on each game.
And so at that point, it's a real question of like, either put him in or don't. And I really am going to see what happens in the next 5-6 years to see whether or not this lifetime ban gets lifted, because he's no longer with us. And I mean, I think the rule is the rule. You're not supposed to bet. He did, and I would lean more towards the fact that I don't think he should go in. But if we also start seeing Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and that crew get in years down the line, well, maybe then you start to have conversations about P. Rose, especially because of that lifetime ban and his life no longer being here. So there's that. It's a conversation in which you could go down many different avenues. To close out the show, I just want relative quick thoughts on the wild card round, and I'll tell you this: so much for home field advantage, except for one team, and that's the Padres. Everybody else, the road team, won. Cameron, what are your thoughts on the wild card round?
I think it's been exciting. Pete Alonso with the New York Mets getting a 3-run home run. Oh, baby. That was an exciting game. I think it's been exciting to have the wild card games, and I look forward to the division series coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think the wild card games have been incredibly exciting. I think, at least for that round, I am firmly on the Tigers bandwagon after seeing what they did at the deadline and seeing them sell off some of their better players and then make it to the wild card. I'm going to root for them. I like what I see, but I think the interesting thing, if we look at it, is you've got the Tigers are playing the Guardians, which is an AL Central matchup. You've got the Mets are playing the Phillies, which is an NL East matchup, there's really only one divisional series matchup where it's not in the division that they play in during the regular season. I find that really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that series,
like even the Padres and Dodgers, they're in the NL West.
And that series you're referring to, of course, is the Royals and the New York Yankees, which ask me if I ever thought that the Royals would beat the Baltimore Orioles. Not on your life, and not in a way that they would sweep, this mini series. Like it was like, whoa,
and,
like where did you guys come from? Like,
well, and not to belabor the point, but you bring up a good point. 3 of the teams in the AL are from the Central: the Royals, the Guardians, and the Tigers. It's crazy.
And wouldn't it be amazing to see the Royals, the little old Royals, beat the big bad Yankees? And hey, why not get the Padres to beat the Dodgers too? Because
you want
the
to
West
Shohei
Coast,
Ohtani, you
it's
got
the
him.
big bad Dodgers as far as I'm concerned. You didn't pick the Jays, damn it.
Oh, that.
Yeah, right.
Get out of the division series.
Not that we're bitter.
No.
Not that we're bitter about that at all. That he didn't pick. No. Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. You guys like the wild card series 2 out of 3 as opposed to
absolutely
a one and done.
One game you have too much chance of something fluky happening. A 3-game series, you got to win 2 games in order to move on.
Got to have at least a 3-game series because one and done, too much can happen.
And I also like the fact that it is, even though it only worked out for one home team. But I do like the fact that it's all at the same site. In a situation like the best out of 3, if you're gonna do that, you're gonna do it. You're gonna earn your keep. If you made home field advantage and you're only playing 3 games, that's the advantage you get, and that's where you put the road team kind of their backs up against it. I don't think it would be fair to say in any other series but the wild card, that you have to play all games at one site. I mean, you do get the advantage of 2 games at one site, 3 games at another, and then that's it for the divisional, and then you go 2-2 or 2-3-2 in the championship series plus then the World Series. I think MLB does a pretty good job at setting it up for success. And I gotta be honest with you guys, and I honestly wanted to start this conversation in our group chat. I love not having a horse in the race. Watching baseball, like I could sit there all day long and just watch. It's incredible. So it's gonna be good, and we'll report on it as the divisional round and then the championship and so on and so forth. Because literally, you just gotta turn on one network here in Canada, and that's Sportsnet and Sportsnet 1. If you don't have it, you should get it. You should get the package that Sportsnet does, because it would be worth your while for the beginning of the NHL season plus then the MLB playoffs. Quickly, who do you guys think is going to win the World Series? All said and done.
Oh, wow.
Josh, start with you.
Just based on talent alone, I think it's going to be the Dodgers.
I'm going to go off the beaten path here, and I'm going to say the Cleveland Guardians.
Nice. Mississauga connection.
And I'm going to go off the beaten path in the other way and tell you that the Philadelphia Phillies, they were there last year. They're still coached by Rob Thompson. Canadian, you got to give the Canadian love there a little bit. That's who I think is going to win the World Series. I do believe that the Yankees, the Mets are going to be in that mix. But I really think that the Philadelphia Phillies are going to get it done last year, because they were just so very close last year that we almost had that. And I think, Canada here would have respected Rob Thompson. They do anyway, but I just think they're going to get over the edge there this time around. So enjoy the playoffs as we often do. I want to close out the show on a bit of a sad personal note, as we've chatted about a few times on the program. My niece competes in multiple horse shows every year, and she rides a horse by the name of Penny, and the horse has a name during the horse shows of Worth Every Penny. While I'm sad to report that Penny unfortunately broke her leg late last week as you're listening to this podcast, and they had to put her down. So I want to send out to the whole farm that deals with Penny and everything else. It's a real sad loss, and she broke her leg basically in half. The vet said it was a 1 in a million situation, and it happened, and she was worth every penny. And we send this episode out to Windermere Farms and Olivia, and things will come around, but I know Penny is going to be dearly, dearly missed. That is the end of our episode for this week. I would like to thank Josh Watson, Cam Jenkins. I'd also like to thank our technical producer, Mark Aflalo. Stay tuned for next week, because you just never know what happens when you enter the neutral zone. Be safe, be well.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.